Hi everyone and welcome to the Round 1 report from the World Chess Championships 2010. It was an incredible opening game to the match. In case some of you weren't watching or don't know the result, I won't tell you just yet. Play started at 3 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time, an hour later than was advertised on the website. Topalov had white and opened with d4, to which Anand replied knight f6, and after c4, g6, knight c3, and d5, the game has gone into the Grunfeld defense, which is very popular at top level. Vishy usually plays either the Slav or the Queen's Indian defense, so it was somewhat unexpected, although he's been playing it a bit more recently. In any case, the theory on the opening is massive, and the players played the first 18 moves in less than 10 minutes. The game went along one of the many book lines in the exchange variation. C takes d5, knight takes d5, e4, knight takes c3, which allows white a big pawn center with b takes c3, and black will aim to undermine it later with moves like c5 and bishop g7 and so on. So bishop g7 is what Anand played here. Next game bishop c4, now c5, knight e2. Which is preferable to knight f3 because of bishop g4 with good pressure on the white center, and with the knight on e2, white retains options regarding the f-pawn, which he can push for an attack later on the king side. So knight c6 with more pressure on d4, and bishop e3, castles, castles, and now knight a5, which is still well within book, although bishop g4 is more popular at this stage. So bishop d3 from Topalov, just preserving the bishop pair. And now b6, queen d2, aiming amongst other things to exchange off this important dark square bishop. And now e5 from Anand, which is applying further pressure to the white center. And this was the last book move of the game, because here Topalov played bishop h6, which is trying to exchange off this bishop on g7, because it's an important defensive piece, and it's also a gambit because after the exchanges that follow, black will be a pawn up, but white has good compensation for it, and it's safe to assume that it's part of Topalov's preparation. After c takes d4, bishop takes g7, king takes g7, and not d takes c3, because now comes queen h6 and white wins easily. So king takes g7, now c takes d4, and e takes d4, and black has won a pawn, which Vishy must have been planning on trying to maintain and later winning the endgame, but Topalov of course had other ideas. It's not uncommon for him to sacrifice a lot of material for attack. In almost every game he plays, he goes all out for the win, so we can expect lots of this type of play for the remainder of the match. After rook ac1, the position can be said to be equal, with total compensation for the pawn already. White's pieces are ready to spring into action, and he has control of the c-file, which will prove strong. Black, on the other hand, is largely undeveloped. And here Vishy played queen d6, which is aiming to impede Topalov from playing e5. So he played the strong push f4, which makes e5 playable again, and prepares strong play down the f-file. Anand again played prophylactically with f6, stopping e5, and Topalov played f5, which gains good space but weakens e5 permanently, which Vishy was quick to take advantage of with his queen, which is maintaining the protection of the d4 pawn, which is pretty much his only asset in the game at the moment. So knight f4 is the next move from Topalov. The other main alternative is rook f3, which is preparing a rook lift to attack on the king side. And it's already starting to become clear that white has a strong attack brewing, and black must defend carefully, especially as this is certainly preparation from Topalov. So g5 is what Anand played, chasing the knight away. The other option is to develop his bishop to d7, which in hindsight may have been more prudent, but we're all wise in hindsight. Here white has two main options, knight d5 and knight h5 check. And knight d5 is strong, but it's easy to challenge, and knight h5 is more flexible and it comes with tempo because it's check, so it's no surprise that's what Topalov played. Knight h5 check. And after king g8 came h4, which is aiming to directly open lines to the black king, and Anand responded correctly with h6 just bolstering his pawn, although it allowed Topalov to open up the h-file. Anand's plan was clearly to defend as well as possible, try and trade off pieces and win the ensuing endgame with his extra pawn. Playing instead here, g takes h4 is refuted completely by queen h6, forcing rook f7 and now rook f4. White has a significant advantage. So h6, now h takes g5, h takes g5. And even at this stage, the moves were still being played very quickly, leading most spectators to believe that both players were still in their home preparation. Here Topalov played rook f3, and for the first time in the game, a reasonable amount of time was used on deciding what move to play. Vishy used perhaps 15 minutes here, indicating that he was now playing over the board, and it's clear how Topalov is going to attack, but the problem for black here is that his pieces are not coordinated well and still largely undeveloped, which is going to be problematic if white can find a way to open up the position. Vishy decided on king f7 to defend because the pawn at f6 is vulnerable at the moment, and rook g3 is threatened from white with some tactics and a strong attack in mind. However, this is not the best defense. Perhaps better was either bishop b7 or bishop d7, but even then black would be in trouble with the same attack from white, which is an incredible conception from Topalov and must surely be part of his home preparation. If you want to try and spot his move, then stop the video now. Knight takes f6 is the move he played, which is so deep that Fritz judged it as a mistake when I left it analysing the game. However, Rybka and Stockfish, the new engine on the scene, which isn't quite as strong as Rybka but still pretty good, both judged it as by far the strongest move in the position, and black's only hope is to accept this sacrifice, but no matter how he does so, white's attack is huge and worth the material investment with interest. And as a backup plan, white also has connected passed pawns now. Anand recaptured with his king. Let's have a quick look at one line if he captures with the queen instead. If queen takes f6, now rook h3 is very strong. After, with best play, king g8 and now rook c7, which forces black to give back material in order to defend effectively. The only playable move here is bishop takes f5, and after e takes f5, rook f7, queen c1, white has a significant advantage which will be enough to win with accurate play. So, king takes f6, now rook h3 is what Topalov played in the game, and he played it instantly, which clearly indicated that he was still in his preparation. So rook g8 from Anand, which is the best that black has here in order to defend, and the move, the only move really that he has. But now comes rook h6 check, king f7, again the best move, and now rook h7 check, which attains a very powerful rook on a 7th rank. And now, no matter how black plays, he's lost. Anand tried king e8, which was his best chance. Other defences also failed. For example, if king f8, now queen b4 check, king e8, bishop b5 check, and white wins. The evaluation is at over 5 pawns advantage, so it's all over. Another ineffective defense after rook h7 check is king f6, because now comes rook c7, and the threat of rook f7 mate means that black must give up his queen with queen takes c7, but it's going to be game over after that. Another possibility after rook h7 check is rook g7, but now comes rook takes g7 check and king takes g7. If instead queen takes g7, now rook c7 check wins. So king takes g7, now queen takes g5 check, to which there's only one decent response, king f8, now queen d8 check, king e8, queen takes d4, and white has a decisive positional advantage as well as 3 connected passed pawns. So rook h7 check and king e8. Okay, that's the end of part 1.